We're going to try a vector style. I'm going to try to make a vector style out of a photo, uh, kind of in the style of Shepard Fairey, with his famous um, artwork and graffiti. Um, so I brought in my photo. I'm going to go grab, I'm going to make a selection, but I'm not going to use the quick selection tool or the pen tool. I'm going to go back to something we've used before, and I'm just going to grab the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to go around my subject, and I'm not going to worry about I brought in this photo because of his very curly hair, and I'm going to show you that I'm not going to worry about the hair that much for this, because we're looking for kind of a graphic kind of design look with those hard edges. So it doesn't matter, and I'm going to start going around him, and I'm not, I'm not worried. I have some shapes, some curves, but I'm not going to be hypersensitive about getting it right. And I think you'll understand why as I go. As I get up to his hair, like I said, I'm gonna get some of these curls, but I'm not gonna overdo it, right? I'm just really, I'm moving very quickly with this tool and kind of get an outline of his many curls, but not going into too much detail. And if I used the quick selection tool, I'd have lots of that. And for this particular assignment, I don't need all that because it's just going to work against us. If I have these wild hairs coming out there with the quick selection tool, and sometimes it looks fantastic, but for this particular assignment, I'm not really concerned about it, and I think you'll see why as I go. All right, getting down close, come around the edges here, and I'm going to, oh, he's got some negative space there within that hoodie, but I'm just going to leave it there and come down and make my selection. Okay, as you can imagine, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a layer mask to get this cut out. I also want a white background, so I'm going to come down to the selection, choose solid color, and I'm just going to put white back there for now, and I'll drag that underneath. And you'll see that I do have some rough edges, and it looks kind of funny now, but I think it'll be fine for this assignment. If I hold down my Option key and click on that layer mask, you'll see the actual silhouette, and you'll see I have some really defining edges. I'm going to hold down my Option key again, click back on it, and now I'm going to add a hue and saturation layer. Go down to the adjustment layer, go up to hue and saturation, and all I'm doing is taking the saturation down to 0, effectively making it black and white. I'm next going to go add another adjustment layer, and I'm going to add a solid color. And it doesn't matter what color I choose right now. I'm going to choose red, and I'm going to hit OK. What I'm going to do is come up to the blend mode and choose hard mix. And then I'm going to double click on that actual color and get the color picker back up. And you see I'm going to move around in the value of that hue, right? I mean, I could change the hue if I want to, but I'm just moving around in the value of that. And I'm trying to get kind of a sense of what I want as far as I'm looking kind of at the value on his face, the graphics of that, of what those shapes are going to ultimately look like. The colors aren't really necessary right now, but as you see, as I click around in that value, it changes that. So I'm really just trying to get some shapes on his face that I think grid. That would be very dark. Not that it's wrong. I guess it's really just a matter of preference. What I'm really trying to do though is keep the definitions of his body, right? I mean, I don't want to eliminate his neck completely. So I'm just looking at some of these definitions. Maybe I don't want that. I'm looking at the contours of his mouth now. Maybe I'll just go right there for a little bit. I'll leave it like that for a bit. I'm gonna hit OK. And then I'm gonna add 2 adjustment layers. The first one is gonna be a black and white. I come down to my half moon, I click on black and white, and I'm gonna come up to here, and you'll see the reds are at 40, the yellows are at 60, the greens are at 40, the cyans at 60, and then I get down to blue and the magentas, and they're different. I want to keep it in line to that. So I'm going to change the blue to 60. And you could just type it in if you want. I'm moving my slider to 60. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm going to move it in 61. And then I'm going to move my magenta. I actually want the blue at 40, I'm sorry. And I'm going to move the magenta to 60.
4, 0, 6, 0.
So I have 40, 60, 40, 60, 40, 60 all the way down. And you'll see why that's going to be important later. I am then going to add a gradient map layer. So I have this top one highlighted. I come down to my add adjustment layers, and I'm going to go to gradient map. And I'm actually going to double click on that gradient map. And you'll see on the gradient, I have black on this side and white on this side. This square here is actually the color stop, so that's at 0. The white is at 100. I'm going to add 2 more steps here. So I'm going to just click on that, and I'm going to change this location, and I'm going to type in 40.
0.
And I'm going to change the color. Clicking on this color, I'm going to come down. I think I'm going to choose maybe a blue, something like that. Yeah, and I'm going to hit OK. And these colors that I'm adding, or you're adding right now, aren't going to be permanent. So I'm really just looking at the gradient and the value on this photo that I'm changing to a vector. May not make sense, but it will, I think. So I'm going to hit OK on that. I'm going to come up and add another stop on here, and I'm going to change this value to 60.
6, 0.
And I'm going to choose a color again. And I think I'll go with I'm going to choose a different color on the color wheel. And maybe I'm going to do like a complementary yellow. And as I said, these are going to change. Yeah. Maybe I'll do more of an orange. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK. Okay. I'm going to click on the color, the photo layer. The layer that I have my photo in, and I'm going to convert it to a smart object. I right click and I say convert to smart object, and you'll see it takes away that layer mask and created a smart object. All right, now we're going to start adding some filters, and I'm going to go up to the top and go to filter, and I'm going to go to stylize. And I'm going to go to oil paint. And And when I click on that, I'm going to change my stylization to 5 and my cleanliness to 5. The lighting I don't have on, so I'm not going to worry about this. The scale, it's set to 10, so is my Bristol. It doesn't matter because I don't have this on. And I'm going to hit it OK. Then I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to go to Shadows and Highlights. And wow, it really added some highlights. So I'm going to go to the shadows, and I'm just going to play with that a little bit and drag that around. And you'll see the contours of his face and his hair. When I move that amount, it really changes. I'm going to leave him right about 30, I believe. And then I'm going to go down to highlights and drag that up to about maybe 25. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to this photo layer and I want to duplicate it. I can drag it down to the add a layer. I can do that, or I can just hit Command J on my keyboard, and I did. It's important that we're going to work on the top one. I have 2 copies of this. They both have the smart filters I put on it, but I'm working with the top layer highlighted. Okay. I'm going to go to the paint again. And I'm going to go up to filter and go to oil paint or stylize and go to oil paint. And this time I'm going to change the stylization, take it all the way up to 10 on this. And I'm going to say OK. And I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm just going to go oil paint, 10, yes. Okay, that's 2. Filter, oil paint, okay. And if you're watching my design now, it's slowly changing. It's getting more and more of that paint look. But I'm losing some of the details on his face. So I've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to add 1 more. Filter, oil paint. And again, it's all the way up. I added 7 oil paint layers. And you can see, if I zoom in, that his contours of his face have kind of disappeared. I want to get him back. And how do I do that? I add a layer mask. Okay? Come down to the layer mask, and I'm going to go get a brush, just a regular brush, and I'm going to make sure that the hardness is set at 0. And I'm just going to go over some of the details of his face that got erased, mainly his eyes. Right? So I get the eyelid back. I come over to this one. Yeah. And I like that. It looks good. Okay. Maybe on his nose a little bit and his mouth. Might go back and get some of the contours of his hair, since he does have that wave in there. Beautiful wave hair curls. And I'm going to get that back too. Yes. Okay. I like that. And maybe on his neck a little bit. Okay, once I have all those back, I am going to click on the gradient map layer, the one I made earlier. So it's still on the top. I'm going to click that and highlight that, and I'm going to click on the actual gradient again. I wanted you to download the filters that I gave you. If I click on my folder that I made, let's see. And I go to, where is it? My vector style folder. I gave you these the gradient here. The way I bring that into Photoshop is like this. I go to this little wheel up here and I click that on and I say import gradients. And it's going to go look, and I would just click on that. I've already done it, so you don't need to do that. But I also have my Texturelabs grunge and my Texturelabs vector little star that you should have downloaded too. So with that, I'm going to go find them. Since I brought them in, they're on the very bottom. And if I open that up, I have these different styles. And I click on each one. So like I said, we were only using those colors to get a certain balance on that face, right, on the values. And I want you to choose one of these. I really like that red and gray. It's really beautiful. I'm gonna go to this one though, and I can move these around if I need to. If I wanted to have a little bit less purple in it, I could. I had it set at 40. I had this one set at 60. I could move this over. But you'll see at the end, we're going to go back and we're going to actually have a final design on that. I'm going to choose that color. I'm going to say OK. All right. And now I'm going to play around with the value and the hue. So I'm going to click on the color fill layer, this right here. And I'm actually going to play around with the value in here and also the hue. You can see that if I just move the hue, it starts to change the value on his face, right? And his hair and his neck. I'm just moving this back and forth. You see if I go all the way up, it's really changing. I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm just moving this up. And here's the second thing I'm doing. I'm going out into my value and I'm going to just hold this down and click, and I can drag this around as well. And you see I'm starting to really change this. So it's up to you to find something that you really like, how you want your design to be. I'm looking at his hair and how much do I want in there. And I still can see all the contours of his body. His neck is still visible. I'm deciding how much what I want. And once you do this, you can always go back to the gradient map and change it again. You can click that on, come up to here, and actually go back to those textures and change them again if you wanted to. I'm going to stick with my violet. I'm going to hit OK. All right. Now I'm going to add those other files that we downloaded, and one of them I'm just going to add that star effect, and I say File, Place Embedded. And I'm just going to grab this vector, kind of a star shape, and say Place. I'm going to make it big, and I am going to put it in something like that. And I'm just looking around the edge how I want that. Maybe I want it even bigger, so it covers the whole entire photo. And I'm going to hit my check mark at the top, and I'm going to drag that vector file. I'm going to close this layer up. I'm going to drag it underneath the bottom of both my photo layers. And there I have that. I'm also going to add the other file that I gave you. I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and I am going to get this grunge texture layer, and it went right on top of the vector, so I don't have to move this one. I'm going to drag that over and hit OK. And if it's a little bit too intense, I can come up to the opacity and knock that down a little bit. You'll see if I go real far, it'll add that color at the bottom. I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come up, click on the very top layer, and I'm going to add a border on this. And I do that by going to my rectangle tool. I grab the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to draw, starting at left corner and go down to the right corner. Something like there. Yeah, and let go, and it fills that up. What I want is the stroke, and if I look in the top of the option bar, it has fill and stroke. I'm going to click on the stroke and put a white stroke on there, and I'm going to come up right to the right of that, where the pixel size, and increase that. And you'll see the white border is getting bigger and bigger, something like that. And I want to get rid of the black. I go up to the fill at the option bar, I'll click on that, and I come down to this where it says no color, and I click on that. So I have my border. I'm going to click over here on Photoshop, so cancel that, get my move tool, and if I need to move that around, I can just hit my arrow keys on my keyboard, but I think it's fine. And that's it. That's my vector. I'm going to say File, Save As, you know the drill, on your computer, put it in your folder. I'm also going to go back and File, export it as a JPEG. Okay? That's today's lesson. Thank you.